you doing? Yeah. We're good. You're good. You're good. You're good. I'll be with you. I'll take that credit later. Okay. I appreciate you going, my man. Hey guys, come on in. How you doing? What's up? Yeah. It's okay. We'll talk. It'll be clear. We'll get you set up. Hey girl, let's get going. Head to the library. Yeah. Go ahead. Here you go. Yep, thank you. You'll pick it up. Thanks. Lord, thank you. Do the best I can. It is. Yeah. I love being a guinea pig. What's up, my man?
He's like, all right, I'm gonna type
this. Gotcha. Yeah. All right, I'll talk to you. Thanks. All right, on your desk. How's everybody doing, first of all? It's good to see you. I'm doing well. On your desk, this is what I need to have out. I need your vocabulary words out. Julia, I need your vocabulary words out. I need out your essay, the Edward Said essay. I need your homework from last night. And I need your notes. Where you take notes. We're going to be taking notes for the first portion of the period. For the people who weren't here yesterday, we had some sickness going through. Welcome back. All right. The verb we're going to work on today is Sabrina? Synthesis, or we're going to synthesize. Now, this shouldn't be a surprise. We know that we're wrapping up multiple texts, multiple pieces of fiction over the course of the semester, and we're going to be connecting it to what? We're going to be connecting it to Edward Said's essay, right? The nonfiction piece. So listen, let's look at the definition. Synthesis means combination of parts into a whole. Okay, so today, our goal is this: to think back on our pieces of fiction, think about, paraphrase, understand Edward Said's point of view in his essay, and bring all of them together. That's our goal for over the course of the period. We're going to take Edward Said's ideas and attempt to see those ideas at play within the literature we've studied. Any questions on that? Your homework is up here. Shouldn't be any surprises. The study guide is on Edline. If you have any questions about this, you can see me after class, but we've known this for a little while. Okay? Where we're going to start the period is where we started the period yesterday. We're going to start with this image. We're going to start with the image that you guys had of the young Syrian boy in the refugee camp. Does everybody recall? Okay. With your vocabulary words in front of you, can somebody go ahead and use some to review what we said yesterday about the condition of this boy from the Syrian refugee camp? What are some words that you would use to characterize his situation? Go ahead, Vikram. You have to speak up a little bit. Alienated, which means? Alone. What's another word that you might use?
Dislocated.
What does it mean?
It means that he's not with the rest or something. He's disconnected.
Okay, disconnected. Because he's no longer in Syria, right?
Yeah.
He's in a camp. Okay, good. Dislocated. Away from home. Michaela?
Independent.
We talked about the idea of independent. Nicole, what did we say about the idea of independent?
That it has a positive connotation.
Okay. What might, Michaela, knowing that independence has a positive connotation, and we were to look at this image, do you see a positive connotation of his situation within the refugee camp?
No.
What might be a better word to use to characterize the situation?
Individualism.
Okay, individualism.
But that one also is kind of positive.
It is kind of positive. Sabrina?
Estrangement.
Estrangement? Or maybe since I think the idea is you're saying because there's no one else around him. What about isolated?
Yeah.
Isolated? Might that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other ideas? Any other words that you would use? Go ahead.
Discontinuous.
Discontinuous. What does that mean?
Broken.
Okay, broken. Okay. Yeah.
Rift.
Rift. How so? How does the word rift apply to this?
It's like an open, it's
You-
like cracked, he's like, I don't know, he's like split from society or something.
Split from society? Where do we see the potential rift? Where do we see the rift here? Go ahead, Michaela.
Because he's walked away from like the tents in the refugee camp.
Okay.
He's separated from them.
Okay. Go ahead, Nicole.
And that can parallel that he's separated from society, I guess, because the way he's separated from what is his home right now,
Mhm.
he separated that in the same way from society or from what should be.
Okay, very good. Justin?
If you look in the background picture, it looks like there might be like buildings or something back there. So maybe like all the long distance between like the refugee camp and that is the rift.
So the distance between him and the horizon is the rift, a representation of the rift. Okay, very good. Jake?
I was going to say, yes, the city in the background, you can see that large sprawl of land is representative of the rift between him and society.
Okay, very good. All very thoughtful ideas. Now, what do you think about this image? If we were to put the two side by side, how is this image different? What are some vocabulary terms that you might use to characterize this image? Go ahead, Dominic.
This one seems more like he is independent because he seems more upbeat. Cause like the color in this one, considering the last one was black and white, the color like shows more positive, and his clothes are like cleaner and newer, and he's holding up a peace sign, so that like connotates good well-being.
Okay, well said. Katie.
Like the image itself is like potent, it's very potent because it's a strong image demonstrating like his independence and individualism.
Can I ask you a question? Where do you see strength?
Well, I mean, the fact that he's behind like the barbed wire and he's like holding up a peace sign, it's kind of like you see strength within him.
Okay. Can anyone build on this idea of strength? Anna?
I would build on hers by saying like even though he might be in exile and he's like kind of like it looks like he's kind of in a prison, he still has strength. Like to show like when you're in exile, you can find like positives out of it.
Okay, very good. Jake?
The barbed wire in this image represents adversity, it represents almost oppression. And this kid, reaching up high towards the top of the image, putting up a peace sign, represents him, showing strength, him working against the oppression being put on top.
Okay. If we were to look at the context here, who might this peace sign be? Who might he be extending this peace sign to? Achin? The people in Syria who are still fighting. Okay, very good. An interesting gesture, trying to climb up out of the refugee camp, climb up out of the refugee camp to extend the peace sign.
So he's outside or inside?
He's inside. He's inside, but the idea is, rising up. I mean, if you were to kind of go with what Jake was saying, it's almost as though he's rising up over the fences that, divide him from his homeland. Does that make sense? Yeah.
This is just kind of like a guess, but would it also be a paradox because he's in a refugee camp, which is something negative, but the picture is also kind of positive because he looks clean and not happy, but he doesn't look depressed and
No.
sad.
Very good. Take us back to the word. What does the word mean?
Kind of like ironic, strange, not normal.
Okay, a contradictory statement, right? But that actually makes sense. Very good. Yeah, Hannah?
Could I relate this back to the essay?
Please.
The image shows the boy like rising above exile and the conditions of it, but in the essay, Edward says that exile cannot be surmounted, so this is contradicting him.
Okay, exile is a condition that cannot be surmounted, yet he seems to be trying to.
Would it be kind of contradictory because it's showing two different views almost, kind of how there's one way of saying that he is imprisoned or he's behind the barbed wire of exile, but he's also having views to the future and
being positive. So could you say there's two different, not melodies, but like,
Points of view, perspectives?
yeah, ideas?
Absolutely. One more, and then we're going to transition. Go ahead.
Okay, to expand upon her idea, she was talking about how said that exile cannot be overcome. Well, you can see in the image, first, to bring it back to the idea of power, the image, the camera is from below the child, and when you see, perspective from up, that represents power, but you can also see the barbed wire slightly above his hand, meaning that he cannot get above the exile represented by that barbed wire and by the refugee camp. He can't quite
Stretch.
above it.
Okay, well said. All very good comments. Hannah brought up the essay. Let's transition to what we talked, or what you guys worked on last night, and move into how the essay is actually structured. We're going to work over on this board today. The question that I want to start with is this one. How is the evidence organized within the text? How is the evidence organized? What did you guys come up with? Remember now, the goal here is to take me back to the text as often as you can. Anna, how is it organized? You can just start with a general statement, but then we'll move into specifics.
It's organized by the pros and cons of exile, like effects that
Okay.
exile can have on you, like the negatives that can happen because of exile, or the positive things you can take out of it.
Okay? Is there anyone that would disagree with this? That we essentially have two major arguments at play within the essay. One, stressing the negative qualities of exile. One, stressing the positive. Is that pretty much it?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you now take me into the evidence itself? Can you summarize for me some of the very specific pieces of evidence he uses to illustrate the negative qualities? Is that clear what I'm asking? Can you summarize for me the evidence he provides us with? Go ahead, Nicole.
So, for example, with the Amy Foster story, he shows an example of someone in exile or someone who's faced with the situation, and then he goes into showing how this is negative.
Can you give me some line numbers?
So, for the supreme disaster of loneliness and despair. And that's talking about after Amy leaves him. He gets himself out of exile, and then he finds someone, and then she leaves him again, basically putting him back in exile. And that's showing the never-ending cycle of it, so that portrays the negative effects.
Okay, very good. Are we going to still work with Amy Foster?
Oh, no, I was going to say a positive effect.
Okay, let's do this, and I'm going to come to you first for the positive, okay? Justin?
I have another evidence for the negative.
Okay.
It's from line 25 or 24 to 26.
Mm-hmm.
It says exile is irremediably secular and unbearably historical. It is produced by human beings for other human beings, like death, but without death's ultimate mercy.
Mm-hmm.
It torn millions of people from the nourishment of tradition, family, and geography.
Okay.
And so
Can you summarize that? Can you paraphrase that? Put that into your own words.
I think like his main thing was saying that is like exile is almost worse than death because you feel so helpless, but you don't like in death it's tough, but you eventually like get to rest and the struggle's over. But in exile, you feel like stuck between death and fighting for your life. So he's saying that exile is more of a struggle than even dying.
Okay. Good. Two examples. Can anyone build on Amy Foster? Anything else that you would say about Amy Foster in terms of how it illustrates the negative qualities of death? Go ahead, Gusta.
Well, in line 63, it says that it's a combination of crushing isolation and the world's indifference. So it like shows how like the individual is like alone in the world and like can't relate to anyone else.
Okay, very good. Yeah, Spikram.
Adding on to that, in line 64 it says, Yankov's rate is described as a supreme disaster of loneliness and despair.
Okay.
So that kind of adds on to like what his argument is about.
Okay, very good. Anna, one more, and then we're going to transition.
Line 67, he says, Yanko is dashing, light, and bright-eyed, where Amy is heavy, dull, and bovine. I think he's trying to say that, like, exile can happen to anyone, even if you're, like, a good person, showing that, like, he was bright-eyed and he was a good person, but exile still happened to him.
Okay, very good. vocabulary terms that we would use to illustrate the negative effects of exile. What are some of them? What are some of the vocabulary terms? Anna?
Dislocating.
Dislocating? Paige? Alienating? Go ahead, yeah.
Estrangement.
Estrangement. Yeah, Jake?
Ostracism.
Ostracism. Okay. Yeah, severe. Rift. Where would rift go? Who said that? How so?
Because regardless of whether you are impacted negatively or positively, there's still a rift between you and your home or you and the place you came from. And so that, I guess you could typically look at that with a negative connotation, but regardless of whether it's negative or positive, it's there.
Does that make sense, Severe? Rift is, both of these conditions can tie to rift. Okay, very good. Good use of the vocabulary terms. Do you want to take us to the positives?
Yeah, online, I think it's 77, like 78. It says James Joyce chose the textile to reinforce his artistic vocation in an uncanny effective way. So it was effective, but like he still went through exile, but it had a positive effect on his art.
Okay. James Joyce's example of using exile to kind of fuel his art. Good. Other examples of the potential positives to come out of exile. Go ahead, Nicole.
The Adorno, is that what you said?
Yeah.
The whole idea of you have to step outside of the norm or the way of thinking that is you're stuck in your home, and that in order to step outside of that you have to get out of your home. So they talked about the dogma and the orthodoxy, and he argues that to defy this, you have to leave your home.
Okay, to defy dogma or orthodoxy, one has to leave their home. Okay, very good. Yes?
On line 156 to 157, it says, seeing the entire world as a foreign language, possible originality of vision.
Okay.
It's showing like the different points of views that we can like finally understand ourselves.
Who said that? Was that in lines 134 to 140? No, okay, so those are Sed's words. Okay, that's where he's explaining his point of view. Okay. If we were to go ahead and give adjectives or words to characterize the positives, what would they be? What are some possible positive effects? Go ahead, Steph. What's that? Enriching. Other ideas? Go ahead, Anna.
Independent.
Independent. Yes, Les. Potent. Yeah, Katie. Contrapuntual.
How is that arguing the positive? Isn't that a not good thing?
Well, it gives you a different outlook on life in a way, you know? You're not, subjective to your, the one view that you were brought up with. You're not subjective to the dogma that was enforced upon you by your home, but moreover, you're able to expand your thought process to, see, the opposition, the other idea.
But how does, I agree with that, but how does contrapunctual, however you say it, argue that?
Well, it's the idea that, you're able to see a broader range, you're able to view different opinions. It's almost like the idea of enlightenment. You're able to see more, you're more knowledgeable.
But couldn't the word could also be a negative way, because you could see two negative ways of life?
Well, I think.
It's two positives, but they're not harmonious. So.
But they're both melodies.
Isn't that not, well, I just don't understand how it argues that exile is positive.
Because as you're going through a negative time, which is exile, you're seeing positive at the same time.
And that gets back to the idea of home. Do you recall that? The idea of leaving it behind that you were talking about yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay. If we were to go ahead and take into consideration both arguments, we're going to move on to what you guys work. We've done the vocab. Now, What about the notion of paraphrasing his argument? What is his argument? What is the argument? Any ideas, Julia?
That's claiming that in today's world,
Claim.
exile is a terminal loss, but can just as easily be a positive impact on people because they finally see the true meaning of it.
Okay, say it to me one more. Can you give it to me one more time?
Sed's claim is that in today's world, exile is a terminal loss, but can just as easily be a positive impact on people because they finally see the true meaning of exile.
Exile is a terminal loss? Okay, I'm trying to catch up to you. And then what?
But can just as easily be a positive impact. Because on people because they finally see the true meaning of exile.
Positive impact?
Because they finally see the true meaning of exile.
It's a long one. It's a long sentence.
But it works, right?
It does work, yes, absolutely. If we were to boil this down to a very simple sentence, what would it be?
Exile, positive and negative.
Exile is positive and negative, right?
But
Okay.
that's so easy.
It is. But hold on, this is, okay. Exile is positive and negative. Now, let's just, if we were to look at the example here, between the two of these, there's a wide range, right? Where can we get access to build something, a sentence like Julia's? Where can we go within the thought process that we've just engaged in to get to move towards Julia's idea? What do you think? The chin? Shoulder shrug?
Well, I guess
How can we build on this simple statement and move towards something that, if we wanted to, something that's more complex like Julia's?
well, I mean, I guess a proper interpretation of the text, maybe some critical thinking.
Let me direct you towards something.
Yeah.
What about these?
Where it fits with the connotation.
Could we take, I mean, is that the difference here? The chin? The vocabulary that Julia used as opposed to the vocabulary that the sample? Is this what separates the two? We have a lot of terms. We have a lot of ideas that we've been working on with the essay. Going back and accessing these can be beneficial. Okay? Now, let's consider what we need to do today. We need to take this, we need to take the essence of this and apply it to our pieces of literature. We need to synthesize. This is one of the components. Now, if we were to create a graphic organizer, and we were to take into consideration everything that you've just said, all the ideas that you've just given me, how can we begin the process of developing a graphic organizer that would represent what he does here? Represents Julia's sentence, the fact that we have the negative and the positive.
Well, you want to have two sides of it for each.
We'd want to have two sides. Good. So, like a T-chart. Okay. So, if we were to look at this and we were to go ahead and put negative on one side, we talked about this, and positive on one side, we would put our text up above, Asher Lev, and we would apply the ideas that you came up with, the vocabulary terms that you came up with, to the text. So negative, you could use a very specific term. This becomes our argument, just like it was Sed's argument. Does that make sense to you? We could put estrangement here. Where inside of Asher Lev do we see estrangement? This becomes a body paragraph. Are you with me? Do you see how we're bringing the two together? Please.
In our final essay, do you want it to be like picking a side, or do you want us to show both sides?
We will probably be showing both sides as Sed does.
But doesn't he have an underlying argument that's more than just exile's two sides?
I think it was
Like-
both sides.
Do you think that he's saying he's using the essay to show both sides, or he's using the essay to communicate something even more than that. Like, I feel like he's trying to communicate more that exile is seen as negative because people don't really understand it, because people don't know how to associate the idea of exile, because a lot of people associate, there are positives, there are negatives, which makes it ambiguous, and because of that, people associate the idea of being ambiguous with a negative connotation, and that is why people see it as positive. I feel like there's more to it than just.
I think you're right. If we were to look at if we were to look at Julia's statement, what side of the statement or what aspect of her statement is the most arguable? Where does the argument lie?
A positive impact can impact because they finally see the true meaning of exile.
Absolutely, or life, or something along those lines, or a truer perspective on life. If we were to go ahead and look at those refugee images again, most people would argue that exile is a terrible thing, as he does in most of his essay. So I think the strongest, the most controversial part of his argument is the second half, okay? If we were to consider this, what we're going to do is we're going to take the text that we're studying here in about a minute, and we're going to look for evidence and explanation of how we see these vocabulary terms, these terms, in the text. Potency, independence and so forth, strength, estrangement, isolation and so forth. Now you're going to have to provide me with evidence, and we have a limited amount of time. This is going to parallel the final exam. So as you're engaging in this experience, you want to think of this in terms of, that anxiety that you produce, that's produced by the time frame. It's a preview of making sure we have textual support or evidence isolated, that type of thing. Now, let me ask one quick question. When we consider our evidence, what forms can our evidence take? Okay, very good. Direct citations. Okay, paraphrase. Well, they would all be inferences, probably. Direct citations, they would all require, there's inferencing going on throughout each one of these. What would be the most general? A summary.
I thought you're not supposed to do a summary.
Summary and paraphrase are not the same thing. Who can remind me of the definition? What distinguishes between the two, summary versus paraphrase? Justin?
I think flat summary is kind of more general. You're just generalizing. You're summarizing what happened over a longer time, whereas paraphrasing is just kind of taking the author's words and trying to make it say what you want to say.
Within a couple of words, a paraphrase is, here's the author's words, my statement is almost the same length, within a couple of words of the original text. A summary, you could have multiple paragraphs, you could boil it down to one sentence. Does that make sense? Okay. Your textual support will come in the form of one of these three. Direct citations is our goal. Okay? Questions? You're in your groups. You had the text that you're responsible for. Fahrenheit 451, Asher Lev, Fahrenheit, Of Mice and Men, Asher, Of Mice and Men, thank you, and the Odyssey. I want one person to come up. Your piece of paper that I'm about to hand you is going to take this form, a T-chart. There are black pens up here that you are going to use to create your T-chart. And I'll be around to help you guys out in the thought process. Send one member from each group up to grab the pens, then come see me for the paper. All right, my man. You want to grab one? Oh, there you go. No problem. You ready to go? Get after it. What do you think, Hannah? You gonna be able to handle a little rip? There you go. No problem. There you go. Do you guys have a piece of paper? Justin, do you have a piece of paper? Oh, he's with Vikram too. If you want to use the board with magnets, you can. You feel free. Where's the mice and men? The mice and men? Are you of mice and men? Okay, let's talk real quickly. Come over here. Let's combine to talk about the text real quickly. All right. So now you probably had the most difficult. What's that? Well, if we were to consider the positive effects, well, what are the negative effects of exile in the novel?
They're lonely. Loneliest guys in the world, no family, no place. They belong.
They don't belong anywhere. They're poor. They all they have is each other, right? What else?
Nobody understands.
No one understands Lenny. It's almost as though they speak a different language. Who are these guys? You have to admit that it's kind of strange, the characters say. So if that's kind of the majority of the text, this is the difficult part, where would we go to look for positive effects? Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Can anyone build on the idea of strength within the characters due to exile? Okay, I like that idea. Do you think you can go ahead, Colette? What's that? Okay. Can you go find text for these ideas now?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the goal. All right, see what you can do. If you have questions, I'll be back around. No problem. How are you guys doing? What do
Slide this so you have more room
I think so. In this, I don't think you need to, but you can do that for your final exam. But let's talk in general terms. Negative versus positive. Where are you going to go seek in the text? Negative qualities.
Towards the end, once he becomes successful with his art.
I think even before that, when he's with Jacob Kahn, and he's already exiled somewhat from his family, but he's joining the group of artists.
But isn't that I think that's his darkest time because he's torn between Jacob Kahn and art and then his family and religion. So
Does he ever surmount that? Does he ever get over that?
it's
No?
just because his family disowns him at the end.
Okay. What is he able to do in Paris?
He makes new roots.
He makes new roots. I like what you're saying. There's a term from Edward Said's essay. Okay. So negative is, one more time,
Being exiled from his religion.
cut off from his religion, cut off from his family, community. Well, you want evidence as best you can, so direct quotes are the best. If time constraints, prevent you from doing so, I would start with direct quotes and then move towards summary if that's what it requires. Okay? How are you guys doing? What do you have for the pros?
When he talks about he wants to go see the world and he wants to see everything now, which means he's comfortable and he's accepted the world. He doesn't always want to be at home. And then when he says, when he talks about Mildred and he can let go of Mildred dying, he doesn't feel super sad about it. And also when he says you are the book of Ecclesiastes, and then
Ecclesiastes.
he says his quote, it shows that he's found himself and his identity through exile, because he has no home, but he still found himself.
Okay, through the text that he's carrying with him. Very good. Negative. Where's the negative component of exile here within the novel? Where are you going to go look for evidence there?
In the beginning.
In the beginning?
Yeah, because we talked about somebody in Lazarus and how he wasn't really,
Now, do you remember that?
because he wasn't there.
I know. Do you remember earlier on in the story? What's another, when he first meets Clarice, Lauren? Where do we see her effect on him? What's the negative effect of exile initially? What does she do to him? Makes him not feel happy. Another effect?
He feels denial.
Goes through denial.
So should we write what this
He does go
means?
through denial. What's that?
So should I write what this means? Or just
Absolutely. Explain it. I mean, what does she run off with?
his heart?
No. It specifically says. You remember?
His face mask.
His mask, right? His happy mask, the mask of happiness. What happens at that point?
He realizes that he's not happy yet.
Okay, good. What are you guys pulling for negative? Where'd you go find?
The sacrifice. Like when he had to burn down his own home, he lost alone.
Okay, very good. What about positives?
I was thinking like when he was in the river, like he started to have like new perspectives of life and understanding.
Any other? Okay, very good. Absolutely. So we talked about the. Well, so what else is happening in the river? New perspectives on life. That's very good. He's got the leisure.
The other
Paper?
like no, the other
Oh,
people he finds.
the runaways.
Yeah, the runaways. Well, they help him reach self-actualization, right? Like find him, like find what he's worth. And what
Where do we see evidence of that? Can you summarize for me what happens? Like, where do we see?
They tell him that he's a part of their society, I guess, their own society, because he's read that book.
Ecclesiastes.
Yeah, and now he's part of it.
Do you remember this, Jake?
Yes.
Do you remember what position does he take within that group that
Well,
Cassie's talking about?
he takes up the position. He remembers it's either the Holy Bible or it's
Ecclesiastes, the book of the Bible? Yeah.
Ecclesiastes.
But I guess my question is this: what role does he take within that group?
Like he fits in, because like in society he didn't fit in, but now like since he's in this group of like-minded, like that understand him, like he finally fits in.
I agree with exactly what you're saying. If we were to look for a specific piece of evidence, what does he do at the end of the novel in relationship to the group? Yes, very good. He leads the group. Okay, and that may tie into a piece of evidence for self-actualization. He becomes a leader of sorts. Okay, very good. Good. Nice job. How's the Odyssey going? Where are you going for negative? Yeah, I'll be with you in 1 second. You're fine. You're fine. Where do we go for? Where'd you go for the negative?
We put a quote where he's crying.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's crying because he feels estranged. I guess,
Where do you see the estrangement?
like, he feels wrapped his own argument, sat apart. I mean, if he had put that in the quote, it would have showed estrangement.
So would you modify your quote?
I think, now that I look at it, I think I would modify it and put in who sat apart. Sat apart because that shows that he's not with anyone, he's just by himself.
Do you guys agree with that? Do you agree with that the sat apart would help maybe build a better piece of evidence? Okay, very good. Where are you thinking you might go for the positives?
Positive, I think, I mean, he went out for war, happy and joy, I'm going to beat the Trojans, and then while he's in exile for 20 years, he actually figures out, oh, I miss my home so much. He figures out the value of his home.
So he uses it as motivation.
Okay. Uses home as a form of motivation, uses the exile as a form of motivation to get home? Okay, very good. All right, good. Well done.
Should we do when he takes off and leaves, or should we do when he takes off and like when he gets kicked out?
He has his own thoughts apart from his specific religion.
So take me through. What's your thought process here? You're starting with.
We're looking at the positives right now.
Mhm.
So the first idea is that exile offers an opportunity to understand one's roots. So basically that when he's able to get out of his house, Paris, he understands his home better. So we use the quote from the For All the Pages Suffer.
Okay, very good.
And
Yes.
then now our second point's gonna be
Talk about his independence.
his independence.
Is that what the independence is here?
The independence is going to be under the next
Okay.
underlined star.
Okay.
Yes.
And then over here, we're going to go to where's the negative?
That he never really, well, I think one of the points I talked about in my exile questions is that his whole life he never really, I mean, he had a home, but he didn't really have a home because he didn't have the proper qualities of his home. His parents weren't really there for him. He didn't have a normal childhood. And so because of that, he was emotionally impacted because of that. He didn't have the right kind of childhood.
I also thought we could use the mythic ancestor and talk about
forgot
that
about him.
represents the cycle of exile, how it will follow you everywhere.
Okay, well said.
Still
Good.
dealing with this book.
It'll be with you for the rest of your life.
No, I know. Promise me you will not.
This is my worst favorite book.
Worst favorite. Come on, girl. Hey, get to work because we have I saw it. We have about 5 more minutes, so this may become a summary, okay? And that's fine. People, We have about 5. I'm going to get. We're going to try to. We're going to try to get as far as we can. We'll finish this on Monday. But listen. As we start to shift to the second column, some of you are already into the second column. We have about 5 minutes left. If you have to shift in the summary, that's acceptable. We can go ahead and on Monday we can finish the evidence portion. We will present. We'll present on Monday. Yep. You have about 5 more minutes. All right. Did you look it up?
Yeah, like it's a dark drawing, but he finds himself, so like he understands himself. So would that be positive? Because, like,
What do you guys think? Ask your group members. What do you think?
members,
I think it was.
Why?
I mean, just the fact that he's finding himself is a pretty good thing. Like, even if it's in a bad way, it's still. Because you find yourself in the darkest times.
Do you agree with that?
it's counterfactual too, because it's a dark drawing, but it's a good thing that he's finding himself.
A paradox. Okay. Very good. All right. How you guys doing? How's this side? Very good. Glad to hear that. Any evidence?
We're looking right now.
Refresh my memory. Confined freedom. Where are we gonna find this?
When it talks about how like they don't have anything holding them back, kind of wander from ranch to
Nothing's rooting them, so they can choose where they root down.
This is positive? What do you think? Well, I don't know. This is the hardest part, right? Where do you think there's positive within of mice and men? Migrant workers, estranged from home, not having a home, having to bounce from place to place. There's not a lot. I mean, what would be the one positive quality that comes out of it? The dream, okay. What do the other migrants say to George and Lenny? They're rare. They're strange, right? They don't understand. They have yeah. Elaborate. Who has understanding? Who understands one another?
Lenny and George, they have a relationship in that they can validate each other's existence because they understand each other.
Well said. That's what I would be looking for. That would be that'd strengthen your evidence. Did you hear what he said? They validate each other's existence? Okay, that's good. Now where are you going to find support for that?
where they say like they have each other.
Very good. Where's that at?
Whenever he talks about the dream house.
Very good, because I've got you and you got me to look after one another. Okay, very good. Okay, that I think that might be a better piece of evidence than where you're currently heading. Okay. How are we doing? How did the positive turn out? 1 more minute. Wrap up the idea you're on. We'll finish on Monday. 1 more minute.
Pretty much included, like, sort of in the beginning when they said, like, that they have each other after.
Okay, that's what this group okay, good. That's where this group just is working on right now. Can you offer me the explanations? Maybe one explanation before we turn this in?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get that done. That'd be fine. Yeah. Very good. All right. They're so cruel to each other.
I messed up.
You're all right. You're all right. All right, people, start bringing your charts up, your T charts. You put your name on the back. That's fine. You can just put one person's name on it. That's fine. One person's name's cool. Oh, you're fine. It's all. That's perfect, man. No, we'll pick up on it on Monday. Just. Thank you. Everyone back to your seats. Take out the 3x5 note card on your desk. 3x5 note card. Thank you. Team 451 and a half, huh? They should be in the center. Does everybody have a 3x5? Those little guys? Not the big one? I have extras. You got it? Good to go? Thank you. Thanks, Tristan. Are we ready? All right, before you leave today, I'm going to ask that you, okay, we've just essentially engaged in the thought process necessary to find success on the final. We have one more novel to read with Lord of the Flies. So as we read Lord of the Flies, we want to be aware of where we're headed. You know, we don't have a lot of time before the final exam. So as we move into the text, we have an idea of bringing text together. We want to synthesize, right? We want to find those common threads that bring text together. So what I'd like you to do on this note card is just, having gone through the experience, I want you to explain how you will synthesize said essay with the literature we have studied. What thought process do you have to continue to go through? What activities do you have to do in order to find success and bring all these pieces of literature together? Does that make sense? You're just reflecting on what you did today and maybe elaborating on it. You've done it. I mean, I would start with this, right? The reasoning that's behind this. Okay? So again, what do you need to do to synthesize the text? There's about 2 minutes left. On the way out the door, you'll put your exit slip on the bookcase. Yep. You will put your name on it, yes. And we've already touched on the homework. It's over here. We should be good on that, though. Go ahead, make sure that you write to the bell. I want to see what you have to say. Any clarifications? We could. Make sense? Always.
He's not here today.
I know, I saw that.
Yeah.
No, it's not telling. It's not telling. I talked to him afterwards. Yeah.
You knew he was going to be here?
Yeah.
What?
I know these things.
How
are you doing? You're done?
Yes, doing here.
Shh, get to work. Get to work.
I said, I'll synthesize the literature by looking for negatives of exile from the essay and then paralleling it to examples of negatives from the book of exile, like the negative effects.
The negative effects. What about the positives?
I said the same.
Okay, the same. Okay. We have 1 more minute. How you guys doing? Good? How you doing? Good, Jen? Good to go? Ready for Lord of the Flies? You guys, have you started? What's that? Did you read?
Yeah, I know. Well, no, not that. But when we were doing the 18 through 21, I wasn't even like that confused.
There you go.
I wasn't even that confused. I only had a mild like seizure.
Exit slips up here. Have a great weekend. Good luck with Lord of the Flies. Enjoy it. Have a great weekend. See you.